You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Dominating the Western Pacific picture today remains Typhoon Haishen, which is still a very powerful typhoon, still around the borderline for Category 4 and 5. Interestingly, we've just downgraded it actually from a second Category 5 peak that happened earlier today to 155 miles per hour, pressure estimate around 912 millibars, and still a very intense cyclone. Possibly even further deepening on the way, according to one or two model runs. And obviously the threat is growing for the Japanese islands, particularly the Ryukyu Islands of Okinawa, but especially the Amami Island chain. After that it will move on to the Korean Peninsula, where it will have its third typhoon impact in a week and a half, which I don't think we've seen anytime recently. Certainly, probably the worst year in South Korea since 2002, I would imagine. Don't quote me on that. If anyone is in South Korea today, watching our stream, please let us know how bad the two typhoons so far have been and how people are preparing for this one. My name is Nathan Foy. I'm joined by our team for this hour of discussion. Tonight with me is David, Mike, Ethan, and Thomas. Good evening to you all.
Nathan, how are you?
We're all right. So this is the main feature. There are also several Atlantic areas of interest as well that I'm sure a lot of people want to talk about. This is looking at the Atlantic now. You can see a few systems there doing various things, which we'll talk about in the not too distant future. And also, let's see if we can get the Eastern Pacific. If it's the right part of the Eastern Pacific. Okay, perhaps not. What's left of Nana is perhaps making waves in the Eastern Pacific Ocean as soon as I can get that up on a screen somewhere. Not there. There it is.
It's actually pretty close to tropical depression.
Look at that. That's looking pretty decent. So we'll get onto that shortly. But the main topic of discussion is obviously Typhoon Haishen, which is still looking very good indeed. I'm sure you guys will have a lot of opinions about whether it's been a Category 5, whether it is a Category 5, whether it's going to be a Category 5, how many times it was a Category 5. So far in our preliminary analysis, it's happened twice. Last night at about this time, because we were on air for it, and earlier today for about a 6 to 9 hour period. That has just decreased again. So, Thomas, your thoughts?
So I think that this has only had one Category 5 peak, and that was the one today. I don't think it quite made it there last night. I think that it's not unreasonable to go with 160 last night. I think that was still a good call. I think that 155 or 160 was fine. I'm keeping it with 155 because I'm very, very picky these days about when to upgrade Saffir-Simpson scale categories anyway. If it's a borderline case, I'm more often than not going to go with the lower end, which is a very different sentiment from the people last year that know me, knowing that I a lot of the time would go the other way around. But these days I've become far more conservative on things like that. Regardless, its satellite appearance last night looked fantastic with that rapidly improving structure. This morning it came back after those cloud tops waned quite a bit. And now it looks like it's going through another phase where those cloud tops are waning. And right now, particularly, that eastern eye wall not looking so good.
Yes, I don't have the close-up infrared imagery, so if someone could bring that to us, we'd love to see that. All I've got on my screen tonight is the zoomed-out picture. You can still see it on there, but not quite as good resolution. But you can definitely see on those latest frames the eastern side not looking quite so good, and as you said, cloud tops waning almost across the board. Ethan, how about you?
Well, it's quite interesting what's been happening with Haishen. It's been going through phases of weakening and intensifying, as you said. 155 seems good for Haishen right now, but regarding the Eastern Pacific, Hannah is really close to being a tropical depression.
Who?
Nana is, ex-Nana. The National Hurricane Center gives it a 60% chance of development. And they do say in their TWO, that they issued at 2 p.m. Eastern, only a small increase in thunderstorm activity could result in the formation of a very tropical depression. Now, obviously, that didn't happen at 5 p.m., but it waits to be seen if the
I
storm was
imagine they'll give it an Eastpak name.
Yes, it is. Currently, that it has been redesignated as Invest 90E.
Okay, so they're definitely going to give it an East Pacific name if it does regenerate, but it has come directly from Nana. I think the rule is that it has to maintain tropical depression status as it moves into the Eastern Pacific to maintain the name.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I'm just checking real quick a product on TIMSS that shows the diurnal cycle of a tropical cyclone. And if timing is correct, then it would be safe to say that this waning period is going to remain for the next 6 to 12 hours. And then if we continue to see these pulses that we've seen with the storm, by tomorrow morning, we should see a much more robust storm again.
Wow. And I was just checking the GFS, actually, and it's coming out right now, the 18Z run. And it thinks that the storm is going to... It currently places the storm at a pressure of 917 at the 18Z initialization, for a pressure to increase to 919 around about now, and then to drop to 914 in the later part of the day local time as it moves over the southern islands of the Daito chain, the very tiny islands that you see on the screen, and then start to weaken as it approaches Amami, but a pressure in the 920s when it gets there. And the central core still looks tight on what the model is projecting.
Yeah, that it does. I'm actually going to take a look at what the GFS exactly is predicting when it comes to wind speeds there, and you'll probably want to tick that up by about 5 to 10 knots just because of the resolution. But the GFS has a 110 knot storm moving through, 125 miles an hour. So it'd probably be reasonable to think a 130 to 140 mile an hour storm could be moving through there.
I
if
think
the
it could
GFS
even,
prediction were to verify.
I think it could even be stronger than that when it moves through Amami.
HWARF shows 918 millibars
Wow.
as it moves on through, with a 125 mile an hour storm as well, just with a much larger wind field.
Once it passes that threshold and enters the East China Sea after passing the island chain, that's when things will really go against the storm, because there's a pretty substantial cold pool now in the wake of those two other typhoons. It will, well, hopefully it will weaken fairly quickly. But by the looks of things, what are we reckoning? Still at least a typhoon landfall for South Korea. What category?
Oh, if we had to take a look at a typhoon landfall right now, I'd go with a high-end Category 1, low-end Category 2 landfall right now. 90 to 100 miles an hour would be my preliminary forecast. I haven't looked too deeply into that. I could probably get you a better answer here in about 10 minutes.
All right. Well, let's take a look at what's going on in the Atlantic then, and I think we're going to have a bit of a saga in the next 10 days, because the models are projecting a bunch of storms forming. We don't know which areas of interest they're going to come out of just yet. Looks like 91L might not be part of that party. But also, there is an interesting looking spin up in the Central Caribbean right now.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Hasn't been marked, so no model support as far as I've seen.
Yeah, but it is an interesting feature, and the Central Caribbean is it's really warm at this point in the year, and at least it looks like on that visible imagery you have there, shear isn't terribly high. I'll have to take a look at that for myself. Actually, no, it looks like shear's a little worse
It does.
than I thought. But it's, I mean, I'd say it has a low chance of developing, if any. That feature that we were talking about to the northeast of Omar is dead.
Oh, is it?
That won't be.
That's gone.
That won't be doing anything. And then, we have those features in the main development region, those 3 areas of interest. And there's a strong possibility that 2 of the 3 develop. Right now, it looks like 2 of the 3 are going to develop. The question is which of them.
Exactly.
And they don't
which one
know
will be
which
dominant,
ones yet.
if any. I think earlier runs had these 2 storms both, having similar intensities, and sort of like the basin isn't big enough for the both of them, and they're just spinning around each other a few times.
Yeah. I think 91L is probably not going to be.
Looks that way.
It's going to be the system that doesn't develop, and then we're going to have Disturbance 3, which is now 92L, I believe, if they tagged it.
I'm not sure.
I thought they might have. Yeah, they did tag it. It is 92L. And then we also have that Disturbance 4 with that 60% chance of developing. I think those 2 systems will be the ones that develop. And I think that 92L will be the dominant system, if there is one.
And, would you believe, Omar continues to defy the National Hurricane Center's forecasts.
It's like Sebastian in that way, isn't it?
Still a tropical depression at this point with 35-mile-an-hour winds. National Hurricane Center. In fact, let me just go back over their advisories and see how long they've been forecasting it to be post-tropical at the next advisory for. I imagine it feels like a while, and yeah, they've been forecasting that since actually not that long, since late last night. So
yeah,
a day longer than expected. Although no, actually no, early yesterday. Hold on, where are we here? I'm losing track of dates and times. 2 nights ago, actually, they said it would be post-tropical within 12 hours.
Yeah, it's defying that. Their discussion literally says in the second sentence, the cyclone is producing a small area of thunderstorms to the south of the center, just enough to continue writing advisories on the system for now.
They're getting tired of it, definitely.
They're getting tired of it. They're literally like, why are we writing things for this anymore? Like, the discussion is so short.
Wow.
On it. It just says it'll be a remnant low in 12 hours, hopefully, and it's moving east at about 5 knots.
So the National Hurricane Center certainly not impressed by Omar's persistence.
No. I think that they would be very happy if Omar decided to stop.
What if it decided to stall and turn south? That's almost like a viewer question there, but
let's not mention that.
Let's not. Just to say as well, on our main Force 13 channel, we have also got a live satellite feed of Haishen as well. That does have the best imagery. Probably better than we'll see tonight on this commentary, admittedly. And that will be playing throughout the storm, so indefinitely for the time being. That'll be with you all night and all day, wherever you are around the world. And we'll take comments and questions shortly on all the activities as well. Mike, you're also here tonight. What are your thoughts on the Atlantic picture right now?
Well, the Atlantic is certainly showing signs that the main development region is going to produce yet again, as we thought. The 2 systems with the GFS of 12E had showed those two systems nearing same intensity, or just about same intensity, and nearing very close to each other. And that reminded me of Gordon and Haishen of 2006. That's what the models reminded me of. Maybe I'm a bit too. But that's, yeah, it was an interesting thought.
Yeah, I mean, one of them was going around in circles, David.
We like guy down that path, really.
Those new to the to Planet David would know what that's in reference to.
Planet David, you call it.
Sometimes he has outbursts, let's say. But David, what's your thoughts on the on the latest picture, you're watching closely Haishen, aren't you?
Yes, they're still maintaining. I have just read the latest from the Joint Typhoon Warning Centre. The eye is still, I think it's 22 nautical miles, but it's more round. So I'm going with Thomas Ree 155
And us
miles per
officially,
hour.
yeah. Our numbers as
And,
well, and the ATCF system, JTWC.
I'm going high range Cat 4. It might even be a Cat 5. So my
It might.
position really hasn't changed.
It might. It most
since-
likely isn't right now, but yeah.
But it could come back, couldn't it?
Briefly, very briefly, it would be honestly remarkable from a scientific perspective if it reached the islands as a Category 5. That would be very unexpected. It should weaken at least a little bit before that point. And maybe the weakening has already started to take place. But again, suggestion that there could be one more little pulse before the storm starts to weaken for good. If you're wondering about those islands then, as far as I gather, the southernmost islands in that group there, that small group, the tiny ones near the storm centre, I think is uninhabited. The northern ones, that pair of islands up there, that's the Diato Islands. They have a modest population. And there you can see on the top left hand side of the screen Okinawa, which of course got at least tropical storm conditions and maybe a few typhoon gusts from Maysak. So they're no strangers to this storm right now, to storms right now as well, after what we've seen recently. And actually, I just want to confirm that there is a population on the southernmost islands, very small, about 68. So a small population could get a really big impact from this storm, because it looks like it could pass right over those small islands.
Yeah, and Devin calculated earlier today a CDPS stage 8 for those islands. So that is a catastrophic storm that would be heading in. And again, that's on the upper end of the most destructive storms you can get. For context, I believe Laura was only a stage 6 or 7 at peak. So, and we saw what that did in Cameron. So this is going to be a big storm, and this is going to produce an awful lot of damage.
And we know Western Pacific storms are fairly large, but this will be a large one, blowing up as it gets closer to land. Let's just see if these links are still working. This might not be fully up to date. Let me just see if we can get updates. The JMA graphic on the right hand side, I think that actually is up to date. It's all up to date, that's good. So you can see there the JTWC expect that the storm will weaken from here on in, slightly at first and then more rapidly as it reaches the Amami Islands, passing Kyushu as a Category 2. They don't specify the landfall intensity in South Korea because it's moving real fast and in between points, but probably a high-end Category 1. And then inland over North Korea, a third storm for North Korea, at 50 miles per hour in 4 days' time. Is it 4 days? 3 days. In 3 days' time. So that's the time scale that we're talking about with this storm. So 24 hours from now, it's not moving particularly fast. Once we get into Sunday night, Monday morning, that's really when this storm will start to speed up.
And it's supposed to track to the rest of Kyushu?
Just so slightly, yes. Probably going to be typhoon conditions there, though. Along the western coast. But that is the main feature worldwide right now, and the only... well, no, it isn't the only named storm that's still active, actually, because we've still got Omar, but the only typhoon strength storm or anywhere near it right now in the world, so probably a rare occasion where there's only one storm strength storm out there, because that's quite rare in September. It's usually more.
Yeah, right now September's not looking too active on the surface level. I think that in a week we're going to be seeing a very different story, especially in the Atlantic Ocean when it comes to
Hmm.
activity overall. Um, I think that especially as we get into the latter half of September, we will see things get much more active.
Well, there's been plenty of questions that have been trickling in. You can send yours in as well on the chat section right now. Just start your message with Force 13 all in text. Do we expect that Invest 91S will form? If so, how strong will it get? That's one that we haven't looked at. Invest 91S, I don't think I've got any imagery of that. All we've got, I think, is the North Indian Ocean. Yep, so I can't show it on imagery. I don't think it looks particularly good from what I last saw, and I don't think it's going to form.
Joint Typhoon Warning Center has it located near 7.8 degrees south, 79.8 degrees east. It's 439 nautical miles east of Diego Garcia, and satellite infrared imagery and a 91 gigahertz microwave image shows the broad area cyclonic turning with sheared convection to the southwest of the disturbance. A ASCAT image indicates a broad defined circulation, 10
Really?
to 15 knots. Winds over the northern periphery, 20 to 25 knot gradient. Winds over the southern semicircle. Upper level analysis reveals an unfavorable environment with
Yep.
high vertical wind shear, 25 to 30 knots, which is only slightly offset by good poleward outflow, 29 to 30 Celsius sea
Warm.
temperature, and slow development as the system continues to track west
Slow
over
development
the next
possible.
2 days.
It won't go it won't go and affect land areas, but
No.
Invest 91S. That's what we're talking about. Just so you know, not the typhoon on the screen. But 91S won't affect any land areas in the South Indian Ocean. But it would be very notable if it did get a name so early in their season down there.
And
Yeah,
they
it
have
would
a-
be.
Go on.
Go on.
I was just going to say, winds, surface winds 15 to 20 knots, sea level pressure estimated around 1,005 millibars, and the Joint Typhoon Warning Center has the percentages at low.
Yep. There's been a few questions regarding recurvature in the Atlantic and what the high pressure's doing. I don't know if you guys wanted to offer any insight on that and what might be coming.
So the high pressure right now is really would if the state remained about the same as it's been for the past little while, we'd probably see recurvature of these MDR storms as they near the Bahamas. But model guidance suggests a variety of different solutions into the longer range. Anything from storms all the way into the Gulf of Mexico to storms recurving in the while they're still in the main development region. So long range, it's unknown. But when it comes to these disturbances, I think recurvature is generally unlikely until we get towards the Caribbean, and then those chances are going to slowly go up.
These ones right now?
Yes.
That's interesting. I mean, I only had time to look at the GFS model earlier, but they were recurving them quite substantially. Let me just take a look at some of the other ones. The ECMWF, yeah, much less of a recurve on that. And interestingly, in long range on day 10, well, that's a due westward track, so that's not very good. What could be a big hurricane, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But these first two really should miss land. But what's behind that? I guess that's going to be the real question of the week.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing is that second one, models are pretty consistent on that heading into the Caribbean. It's that third system that they recurve, that one near Africa, that one that hasn't emerged off the coast of Africa yet.
No, ECMWF isn't doing that.
really. I'm just looking at GFS right now.
And I'm
but-
looking at CMC as well. ECMWF and CMC, which have both performed better than GFS as it happens, are taking it almost due west across the central Atlantic and significant intensification whilst it goes.
And that one
Yeah, I mean,
coming off
again,
the African case, the NHC has it 80%. So it's gone up 10% since we covered it yesterday.
Yeah, it might be slightly confusing. Let me just rehash that information. National Hurricane Center have got a 30% chance on disturbance number 2, which is the one towards the bottom there in the central Atlantic that's sort of waning a little bit and shrinking underneath the influence of that bigger wave near the coast of Africa, moving out to sea now, west of Cape Verde. Well, that's got an 80% chance in 5 days. And behind that, they're already giving a 60% chance for another wave that will emerge off the coast of Africa on Sunday.
And
yeah, and that's,
Nathan, sorry, Thomas, one of them supposed to be a tropical depression by early next week.
Or sooner.
Also,
yeah, that's going to be that 92L, I believe. And 92L, as I do look at more model guidance, it looks like they do support recurve by the time it gets to the Lesser Antilles.
Yep.
So I'd say if you're in the Lesser Antilles, watch out. If you're near the Bahamas, I'd still be watching it because these models do tend to underestimate the strength of high pressure systems.
Oh yeah, now make no mistake, you know, this thing could still track across the whole Atlantic and go either to Bermuda or maybe even further.
For sure. And
US East
it looks
Coast,
like
I'm
the
talking
most,
about.
Yeah, I
It
would
could
agree
do.
with that.
We're not gonna say that and put it up in fancy graphics for sure, but that is one possibility, an extreme long range view.
Yeah, it certainly is, and it looks like this third wave that's going to be emerging off of Africa, the NHC hasn't designated yet because it is in the longer range. It looks like that storm in particular has been the one models have been keen on for a little while now, becoming a significant hurricane while it's in the MDR.
That will be
So
interesting.
that'll be interesting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've got a clone. Let's see if we've got some more questions then. Some comments there. Omar being on life support, etc. How is Omar still alive? Do we have an MJO picture? If you could bring that to air for us, I'll show it on the screen. In the meantime, we've talked about 91S just a little bit, so I think we've answered that question that we've got. Will Omar reform and do what Leslie did in 2018?
No.
It had better not. Do we think that Laura will remain the strongest storm of this year's Atlantic hurricane season? Until the end of October, I'm going to say no.
I would agree with that. I think that especially in October, we're probably going to see a stronger system. And I think that the Western Caribbean, in particular, could be the kill zone in the Atlantic, if you will. So we'll see how that goes. But that's looking gnarly right now in October.
Could there be a tropical storm in the Atlantic by Sunday night? Definitely could. After what we've seen this season so far, they've been going ahead of schedule quite regularly. 92L would be my pick if it was going to be any of the systems there.
Yeah, I would be inclined to agree with you on that, for sure.
Could we get Paulette? Is it pronounced Rene or Reen?
I have no idea. I'm going to go with Renee.
Yeah, I will as well. And Sally by next week. Possible.
Yeah, for sure. That would be crazy. Getting to Greek names in September would be crazy as well. So, but we'll see. It's been a crazy Atlantic season. Can't rule anything out at this point. It's 2020, you know.
And Nelson, one of our chat moderators and our members, says that he is the main feature worldwide, don't forget. Thank you for that comment. Could we, more questions here, could we reach the W name by the end of the month? And it sounds wacky, especially if you asked that at the start of the season. Would we get to W by the end of September? Well, we can't rule it out. Absolutely cannot rule that out.
No, it can't be ruled out at all.
Nathan, MGO in the live comms.
Ah! And it is Rene, by the way. So this is the MJO as someone requested, and does anyone want to explain this and what we're looking at?
Thomas, you reckon you can do it? and the second one.
Oh, there's another one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll
so
go with the first one.
this first one that we're looking at, it's the Madden-Julian oscillation. So basically, wherever the MJO is where you're going to be getting a lot of lift and vorticity potential. And so basically what that means is that tropical cyclones are going to be more favorable wherever the MJO is. So as you can see, it's in the northern Indian Ocean. I think it's actually in the southern Indian Ocean right now. A little bit. That's why we have that invest in the first place.
Yeah.
Is because we do have that Indian Ocean MJO. That's going to be moving more towards, in the next week, the eastern side of the northern Indian Ocean into the western Pacific, as you can see on there. But you can see ensembles have a pretty large amount of uncertainty on where exactly it could go. And the worst part is I see one or two that are taking it into the Atlantic already, and that's not good news.
And I should point out that
coming back in October.
During the whole of Laura's life there, it was in the Atlantic. I imagine that has affected how well Laura did.
Oh, for sure. The fact that we had boiling sea surface temperatures, and the fact that we literally had a system over the Atlantic Ocean that helps with tropical cyclones to not only form but rapidly intensify. That I think that was vital in Laura's ability to get to 150 miles an hour. I think without that, it would not have gotten there. I really don't think it would have gotten above 125 miles an hour without that.
Tell us about the second graphic then.
So the second graphic is very similar to the first one, believe it or not. It's just in a more, it's just a worldwide map. Yes, it's in a more graphical form, but you can see there where you got those blues and purples and those bright pinks. That's where you're seeing the MJO is right now, and you can see it's extremely strong right now. It's expected to get significantly weaker, that rising motion. But you can also see that sinking motion is expected to get weaker in the Atlantic as it moves in through the Atlantic. And the southern Atlantic as well. Something to note, though, is that these are based on ensembles to some extent.
Yeah.
So as more uncertainty rises, you're going to see a more spread out but less concentrated or strong forecast. I would assume that by the time we get to about a week out from 2-week forecast period, we'll start to see those darker colors in both the positive and negative sides of the MJO.
And how often does this update?
I believe this updates every day.
And that's from NOAA, isn't it? One of their sites.
I believe so. This is from
Is it the Climate Prediction Center, that one?
Albany. I don't believe so. I actually think this is a... Yeah, the first one is. The second one, I believe, is actually from Albany. Yeah, it is. You can actually see... I have the URL up, so that's from Albany.
Ah, okay.
From a college here in the States.
But that's what we're looking at there. So hopefully that forecast turns out, well, let's hope the forecast is accurate first of all, because then we know what we're in for. Let's see if we've got some more questions then. Let's see here. And by the way, the MJO extending into the very eastern part of the Atlantic, probably influencing those waves as well.
Yeah, I think that's definitely having some influence on these waves. I think especially those really powerful MCSs over Africa are really getting a boost from the MJO right now. I think in a week's time you'll be seeing less of a conveyor belt coming from the Atlantic, and then you'll see that conveyor belt really start to fire back up in mid to late September.
How many named storms do we think will form this season? Luca says 24. Well, what is our forecast now? Did we say 23 last time?
I believe so. I can go look.
There's going to be no more forecasts from us because it is September, so I don't see much point. But it wouldn't surprise me if it beat 23 quite comfortably the way it's going.
Yeah, I mean, 2020's just been ridiculously active in general. I think that everyone here can agree that 24 storms is not an unreasonable forecast at this point in the season.
After the monsoon season ends, do you think we could see another significant cyclone in the North Indian Ocean?
I don't know. I'll be right back, Nathan.
Yeah. Well, I think there is a decent chance that you'll see something in the Indian Ocean, especially when you looked at that graphic just before and how warm the sea surface temperatures are in the North Indian Ocean. And actually, I can bring to you, we looked at least once in these hours, the sea surface temperature chart. This is the latest. You can see this is from, just lost the date on the bottom there. That I think it says the 3rd. Usually it is about a day out. Doesn't really mean very much if it's just a day. But you can see the Atlantic Ocean there. Fairly warm temperatures. The warmest gradient there is 30 degrees. So very warm waters off the western coast of Florida, wrapping round to the eastern coast as well. The Gulf Stream, 28 degree waters extending all the way up to the Outer Banks. So certainly the potential for major hurricanes all the way up there. If there was one. Not that there is one on the way just yet. The Western Gulf, very warm. The Central Gulf is the small weak point after those recent hurricanes, Marco and Laura. But still, 28 degrees plus. The Western Caribbean, very warm off the coast of Cuba and Jamaica, 30 degrees plus. Further south, a little bit cooler. Nana hasn't really made a dent in those sea surface temperatures. They're already a little bit cooler there. 28 degrees though, it's hardly cool. And the main development region really is, you look at that, the 26 degree isotherm, which is what you need for tropical development generally, covers pretty much the whole tropical Atlantic. So these storms are really going to have their way out in the open waters at the very least. Looking in the Eastern Pacific, not looking that handsome, is it? 28 degrees in a few spots. Many spots actually off Mexico, but a few cool trails after recent storms. I don't think it's recovered from Genevieve actually. The Western Pacific, you'll notice a big contrast once storms enter the East China Sea beyond the Amami Islands. So Haishen's got about 24 hours to make the most of its current conditions before sea surface temperatures drop like a rock from 30 degrees down to about lower than 20 probably by the time it reaches South Korea. Off the Philippines, very warm, 30 degrees plus. In the South China Sea, generally around 30. The Gulf of Tonkin, probably the warmest place in the Western Pacific Basin with temperatures approaching 32. Sea surface temperature anomalies then. This is the departure from the average. The reds obviously above average, the blues below average. What you'll notice there is quite defined equatorial blues in the Eastern Pacific. That's synonymous with the La Nina effect. A mild La Nina currently in play. But as you can see, the subtropical zones, much warmer than usual, mainly in the Pacific, but to a lesser extent the Atlantic as well. So storms are really going to profit at the higher latitudes. Could even be part of the reason why Omar has been surviving for so long. Even if it is only a tropical depression, maybe in a few weeks that might be a category 1 or 2 hurricane that survives at that status for a while, and that could make a bigger difference. We'll see. But there's hardly anywhere in the Atlantic that's below average. Just a very tiny pocket now in the Gulf of Mexico after Laura. So the Atlantic really has all conditions met for more big activity pretty soon.
Yeah, I think that the conditions there are really starting to improve with time. And yeah, I'd agree with you. I think that those sea surface temperatures could sustain tropical cyclones, especially in the subtropics and the Atlantic, for much longer than we'd normally see. I think we can also see what you're talking about in the Pacific, those subtropical zones having above average sea surface temperatures. I think that
Although we haven't
Bobby,
really
Masek, and Haishen have really shown that.
But I'll tell you one
higher
thing,
latitude
we really
systems
haven't
are
seen
huge.
much in the Pacific Ocean in the higher latitudes at all this year, because we've barely seen anything at all in the Pacific this year. Makes you think, if it was another year like one of the recent ones, you might have had a few subtropical developments or even tropical developments at the higher latitudes.
Yeah, something like Lion Rock, you think, or something that crazy?
I'm thinking closer to the Central Pacific.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That would be
there
interesting.
were some suggestions from model runs late August that there'd be something around there, and it's usually the time of year that it happens. Anyway, we're looking once again here at Typhoon Haishen, and visible imagery now appearing over the storm, and more, it never ceases to amaze, does it, the Himawari 8 image quality, and the GOES 16 and GOES 17, three top quality satellites that cover half of the world now. Shame about the other half, but there it is over Haishen right now. And would you describe that as a pinwheel eye?
I would definitely describe it as a large eye. Yeah, I guess I'd describe it as a pinwheel eye, and it's not very wobbly right now, which is impressive. It looks like it's really been able to keep that eye going now for about a day straight. It's really been able to have a robust 15 plus degrees Celsius eye, which is very impressive and
20
very
right
rare.
now. 20 right now.
It's 20 again. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's why to me at least, it's really on the border for Category 5. And you said just
Yes.
before we went on the air that some satellite estimates were now supporting Category 5. Is it still the case, or they backed off?
Let me take a look real quick. I can find that
That's going to
very
be critically
shortly.
important, because we've literally just brought it down to 155. It would be very interesting if the satellites have just gone up.
Yeah, we'll see. These are not the most. The only one that's really up to date is ADT. ADT shows a 150 mile per hour storm. The AMSU, as of 17Z, shows a 160 mile per hour storm.
No. I'm looking at the latest satellite imagery now on the infrared, and the northern eye wall is really getting a battering, really degrading actually. Let's see if we can get the infrared on this. Yep, look at that. The northern area, there's hardly any reds at all now, really fizzling out on the northern side. What do you think's causing that?
Of all things, and Devin, our chief hurricane analyst, and I were talking about it last night, it appears that dry air entrainment is an issue for this storm, which is very strange for a storm of this caliber with this kind of structure to have dry air entrainment issues, especially in the environment it's in.
It's
it
suggesting
looks like it
to me right now that the northern side of the eye might be open.
That, I don't see how you can have a 20 degrees Celsius eye that robust and symmetrical with an open eye wall on the northern side. I'm not sure if I'd go that far.
It's looking very frail. I've got to. I mean, actually, there's a microwave image that came in 2 hours ago. It did look a bit better there, but there was definitely a big weakness on the northern side.
Yeah, it appears there certainly is, and that is a concern.
Oh no, it's great news.
It's good news. Well, yeah, I'm saying it's a concern for the storm. It's great news for
if you're the storm,
people in the Ryukyu Islands. If you're in the Ryukyu Islands, you're cheering right now. That's good news. If this storm were to really have dry air problems over the next day or so, that could really tick down that intensity to 125, 120 miles an hour, maybe even a 115 mile an hour storm instead of a 145 mile per hour storm. and that would be a huge difference.
Especially for these
that
islands
could
which
change
are
things a lot.
used to strong impacts.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, still, it's these kinds of impacts, these kinds of wind speed changes could be critical in just how bad things get for these islands.
So what would you say is the biggest threat now? Wind speed, rainfall, storm surge? What do you think it's going to be for the majority of the population that will get affected, and that would be South Korea?
I think South Korea is going to have storm surge problems.
Yes.
More than anything else. Storm surge is going to be big, and one of the biggest correlations between cyclone damage and the cyclone itself is the size of the wind field. If you have a huge wind field, you're going to get big surge, you're going to get sustained winds for a long time. So while those winds aren't going to be as strong, they're going to get battered by those winds for a while, so that's still a threat. And your other threat's going to be that you're going to be having large waves churned up for a sustained period of time, and those waves do lag behind the intensity of the storm. Just look at something like Katrina. You had Cat 5 storm surge and Cat 3 storm. This could easily be a Cat 1 or 2 when it hits South Korea and have Cat 3 like storm surge of up to 10 to 15 feet. So it is a concern for sure.
All right, I think Mike wants to show us a vorticity chart.
Yes, this just something to quickly know. Invest 90. Is this 91L?
That's 92 that you're pointing at.
Okay, 92L. We've noticed that this area of vorticity has sort of stretched along the western edge. It didn't do that before. If we go back 3 hours.
Yeah, well, go back again. Oh, it's joined up.
Indeed, that's what I'm trying to point out is that we've seen a dramatic, well, not dramatic, but definitely seen an increase in vorticity in these systems in the Atlantic, especially as this one could potentially head into the MDR region. Now, models hint at going this way with this high over here that's around 40, 30 degrees north. But I wouldn't be surprised if this takes the job towards the Caribbean. I mean, I don't know. If we go to water vapor imagery, we could see that not a lot of dry air, except for maybe this dry air slot here, but that's about it. But we see plenty of moisture for development in the wake of this storm.
Look at the Western Atlantic, it's full of it.
Indeed. Full of, as you see, we got the remnants of Omar that just doesn't want to die ever.
Considering that some of the Atlantic borders the Sahara Desert, that's not bad going for moisture pattern there.
No, the only area that would possibly hinder this is that dry air, that little pocket of dry air. But apart from that, it's pretty much really favorable for development for development in the Atlantic.
Just go back to the vorticity once again.
We're at 925 millibar vorticity level.
So intriguingly, the vorticity is higher over the Cape Verde Islands right now, the southern ones,
Indeed.
even though what appears to be the focal point of 92L is to the west.
Yeah.
What can we deduce from that, if anything?
Well, if you could pull up satellite imagery, I don't know, maybe if I'm seeing things, but I look like I saw a bit, maybe just a slight bit of spin in this area, which is why I think satellite has gone with a vorticity extended to the west.
There's a few blowups.
If you go back 6 hours, you could definitely see that there's been an extension towards the west in terms of vorticity.
Oh, of course there has, because it's moving west. That's it, but behind it is still filling in with convection as well. It's very interesting to watch.
Then if we go to wind shear, wind shear doesn't look to be a problem at all.
No, not in the short term.
Here's something that's intriguing. I'm looking at satellite imagery of 92L right now, and I don't have it up on screen share, unfortunately. But it's the interesting thing that I'm seeing is, from Mike's perspective, it does look like that vorticity maximum there is where the most convection is right now. But where that
That's
feature
close.
is that he was talking about to the west, it does appear that there is a circulation trying to form there right now.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
that's
I have been noticing that in the past 3 hours.
that's interesting, to say the least.
So watch this space regarding the Atlantic. We got 10 more minutes for questions on this live stream. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. Why do we have Haishen as a Category 4 if it looks much better than a Category 4? Well, as I said at the top of the show, we have just downgraded it on our books at least to 155 miles per hour based on its degrading eye wall structure. The eye temperature is still extremely warm, but the structure is starting to fade off, especially when you look at the infrared imagery. And even though it was never, by the JTWC, ever a Category 5, I think most of us think it did at least at some point. And now, it doesn't look great. Eye is shrinking.
Yeah, I was about to note that the eye is beginning to shrink in out. That northern side is really looking bad, and that CDO is not looking so good. And that might be due to, first of all, the dry air entrainment, but also shear is increasing. So that could be a result of wind shear as well. And the thing that I was saying earlier this stream, Nathan, is that I don't know how this storm could sustain an eye like that if that eye wall was open. And the fact that that eye is beginning to shrink could mean that it's not going to be able to sustain that eye wall, because perhaps you're right, that eye is open, and it's about to have a catastrophic collapse.
Possibly.
From that in particular. Currently in its diurnal cycle, though,
I tell you what, though,
that
Thomas,
convection closest to the core is supposed to really blow up here soon.
Hey Thomas, if that did happen, you remember some of them models that called for an enormous eye? That might happen.
Yeah, that might. The H-Warp in particular called for an eye that was larger than the entire CDO of the storm before it went through the replacement cycle. If that were to occur, that would be, first of all, an incredible prediction by the H-Warp, and second of all, a incredible thing to watch.
Well, they did incredibly with Laura, so
It did have recon, though.
Well, maybe it can prove that it can do it without recon. We'll see, but that's probably what would happen if that eye did fully collapse.
Microwave, it looks like, can confirm that eye is very close to open if it's not on Sims. So if that eye wall is not open, it's just by a tad. Like, it's razor thin right now. So yeah, that northern eye wall is not looking good at all on microwave or satellite.
Can Omar re-strengthen to a tropical storm since its winds went from 30 to 35 miles an hour?
Did they actually upgrade the winds? I didn't know that.
Yeah, did you not? He did.
Oh my, they did.
That happened a while ago.
If this re-strengthens into a tropical storm, I think I'll quit my weather career.
Already?
I'm so certain that this will die within the next 12 to 24 hours I'm not. Oh, I wish it was gone already. But we'll see.
David,
we'll see how long it persists.
Your thoughts on Omar?
Just looking at it, what is it? 35.3 north, 57.5 west, 30 at 1,006 millibars. And you're saying 35. So, what's the environment like for it to possibly come back?
Well, it wouldn't take much, admittedly. Convection is still bubbling along, and it's still going on those latest satellite imagery frames. So, whenever next advisory is not for a while yet, is it? So we'll see what it looks like in 4 hours.
I will say that the low-level spin that was left when the convection got sheared off does look quite impressive.
Let's just see this. There's an image of it right now, latest visible, late visible there. It's just that one little shoot of convective clouds. That's all that's keeping it a tropical depression.
Yeah, and it's
wow, that low spin does look quite impressive, at least for a system that should be dead already, but somehow still alive.
So more questions whether Nana is connected to 90E. I think we can confirm that it is.
yes, 90E is the remnant of Nana.
But it wouldn't get Nana's name back because it is a remnant. Can Omar please stop living? Laura gave her energy to produce an ugly storm, is a comment from Absentia. Very interesting comment. But you're right, actually. A little bit of Laura's energy did go into Omar. And how do African waves form?
So that's an interesting question. It's really a lot like what you get in the United States. Basically, what happens is you have these fronts and these systems that move across Africa. And what you'll get is these axes where thunderstorms form. You'll get these lines of storms in Africa, these mesoscale convective systems, and these bursts of thunderstorms. And basically, what'll happen is organization can occur to a point they develop a kind of wave axis that consolidates a little bit. And then by the time they get to the tropical Atlantic, because they're thunderstorms, that means that as a result, they have some lower pressures. Those pressures can consolidate, and you can get a tropical depression or storm out of that as they head over the Atlantic Ocean.
So there we are. Let's see if there's any more questions just briefly. I think we got them all. I'm sure people will send some in now. But I haven't seen anything new just yet. So I think we're going to be calling it a night here because we're doing these regular hourly shows right now, aren't we? How long will that keep going for?
We'll see. I wouldn't be shocked if this has to happen for the entirety of September.
No.
Yeah, so just
No.
going to say the next couple of weeks at least.
You can't say things like that. And I can tell you, actually, it won't be happening tomorrow. At least not with me.
Well, we can have other hosts.
We'll see if there's another host in place. But the main story tonight that we take away, or this morning local time, is that Typhoon Haishen remains a very powerful super typhoon with estimated winds of 155 miles per hour. That's 250 kilometers per hour sustained. And a pressure we're estimating of 912 millibars, with further deepening possible in the morning hours, although looking at the eye structure, probably not actually.
Yeah, we'll see.
But if if that eye did collapse and that new one formed, though, Thomas, that wind field's going to be enormous.
Yes, and unfortunately, that could ramp up your CDPS rating.
Ugh.
So I'll be keeping a very close eye on that and ensuring that we have the latest on CDPS on this storm.
Usually, it's not the strongest that are the worst; it's the biggest.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. I mean, just look at storms like Sandy. And you've got, that's a perfect example. Storm size can make a significant difference in storm, and how much rain these storms dump is also significant as well. So just how much damage they're capable of doing.
Water is a very powerful thing. Flooding and landslides, and not a good place to be on those mountainous islands at times. I imagine there'll be quite a few of those as well. This storm is on the way, and that will be arriving probably Sunday night, Monday morning in Japan. Was there something briefly?
Yes. How long do you think until those southern islands near the center will be experiencing hurricane force winds?
Probably a few hours. Lunchtime, maybe, local time. If not, early afternoon. That's it from us, though, tonight. Thanks very much, team, for taking part. We'll be back again in the not too distant future with more coverage on this storm and anything that forms in the Atlantic. Have a good night.